Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a look here, of course, at Bitcoin. Big surprise. Our daily driver, seeing what's going on, of course, with this monstrous beast of a coin. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at best practice, big picture, kind of help understand kind of where we're at. We're going to look at some key level supports and resistances and kind of see if we're going to continue to be range bound, if we're going to break up or down. There could be some signs, kind of pointing in either direction. We want to find out and much more. So if you're new to the channel, not a financial advisor, please note, I love teaching people to trade, however, which is why I create a trading academy, community, and signal group. Been trading for over 16 years, and it's a pretty consistent and beneficial experience for a majority of my members. A lot of my graduates are doing very well too, so be sure to check that out in your own time. But for the moment, just note that the way in which you can register is down below, CryptoCache.tech. All right, so taking a look here at Bitcoin, what we're looking at, of course, is, again, standard Bitcoin behavior or any type of coin behavior. When you have a massive sell-off like 10% in a couple of hours, things get a little shaky and it doesn't recover quite as quick as you'd like it to. Because if we take a look back here and we kind of take a quick peek at the previous dump, you can see that it went sideways for some days, down, and then kind of started to average itself out, right? It takes a little while. The harder you fall, the harder it is to get back up again. So that being said, this is very standard behavior for Bitcoin considering what occurred, but we keep hitting the reset button, unfortunately. And with us hitting lower lows, essentially, if you kind of look at this here, we are making lower lows, and until that trend is broken, we need to kind of expect it to continue. All right, so again, we maybe just want to go ahead and draw out a little trend line here, kind of pushing our way down to kind of just keep that in the forefront of our mind that we are still in a descending type of pattern. There's no essential breakout just yet. So I would urge caution if you're going to take a long, or at least a long, if that makes sense. In other words, you want to have some really tight take profit targets if you're going to take a long position right now. It's probably best to wait in all reality, especially with a couple of things, like the Fed meeting coming up here in a little while, in a couple of days, or not Fed meeting, I forget what it's called, but basically there is let me find it really quick. It is considered the Jackson Hole meeting. That is 8:25 to 8:27. So this is going to be interesting the next couple of days, and a lot of times what you can see is the price action kind of jump up and jump down, kind of bounce around a lot during those time frames. So I would just, in most cases, recommend kind of avoiding that unless you're a bit of a risk taker. Some people are, I prefer not to. All right, so take a look here at some other standard stuff. First of all, we're underneath 50 on the simple moving average. That's a big trend setter for the most part. So that's going to be working as a trend setting resistance level, right? And that's trending right around 22,500. So 22.5 should be a key level resistance, not just based on Fibonacci, but the 50-day SMA. Looking at the RSI, is trending upwards as well, but mostly stuck sideways, which makes sense considering the circumstances and the resistance that we have right at the 21.7 mark. It's retested that level about 3 to 4 times already, and while it's true that you continue to retest something, the more likely it is to break. If we do end up breaking to the upside, I would not get super optimistic. I do think that we're going to see some kind of rejection and or potentially a short squeeze here to inevitably retrace for a dead cat bounce. That's, in my opinion, a possibility. So again, just something we can't rule out, and in general, it doesn't look fantastic here, even though the MACD is starting to wane a little bit, this momentum, it's still absolutely in complete control. So in other words, you hypothetically shouldn't take a long position until it does one of these. Right there at that point, that's when you should hypothetically take a long position. Not saying that you do that now or ever, we still got plenty of time between now and whenever that happens, but generally speaking, that's the concept. So on the daily, we have conflicting information. The only thing kind of positive here is that we do have an ascending type of trend that's occurring, and you can kind of see it here, whereas the price action is trying to break to the upside. But in its history, Bitcoin's done very poorly when it comes down like this, tries to recover and squeezes itself out. The candle wicks start getting longer and longer, and then the price inevitably comes down because the selling pressure is high. Again, most of what you do in technical analysis is kind of increasing your odds of success by analyzing different time frames and past behavior, and Bitcoin has proven to struggle with situations like this. Another thing to recognize too is our RSI. We're getting rejected here at 50. It's happened twice now, so you could argue in the fact that it might be able to push up through there now, which is true, but you should also recognize that it's getting rejected for a reason, and that's a key level resistance right around 21.6, 21.7. Okay, so that strong little resistance zone is going to continue to hold itself until it doesn't. So the best thing, in my opinion, would be to wait for it to break either up or down, and then consider taking a position in either direction. So hypothetically, the price comes up and comes back down to potentially bounce, then that would be a good consideration for a long. You'd have more confirmation. Again, the macro is not telling us to take a long position, but that is essentially what you could analyze with a result of a break through one of these resistance levels. I mean, the one thing that's guaranteed is that the price is not going to do this tomorrow or today. So I'm pretty confident we're not going to see that. Either way, that's kind of where we're at here for the 4 hour. We don't really have much of a divergence here as well. So it is nice to see this momentum continuing higher. But when these start running parallel with each other for a long time, it kind of loses it lacks its luster, right? So a MACD is really not a factor at all. And if we take a look at TD sequential, we see a bunch of resets here. We're hitting 3s and 4s for the most part. There's a 5 as well, but it's consistently getting rejected at this level. And once again, even though we are seeing kind of this type of trend here, it's still not the best trend. Okay, it's not really all that pretty. Again, that's just me personally. I mean, it does look like it wants to break to the upside, but a break to the upside is going to be pretty weak in my opinion, and it'll probably get rejected by certain moving averages. Taking a look at the hourly though, see if we have any consistency here. More so, again, a handful of resets. We hit a 7, that was the highest. Otherwise, 3s, 4s, and 5s. So there's really no consistency in price action. It's just completely choppy, very difficult to navigate, and you want to wait for confirmation, especially if you're day trading. Different story, right? We have some day traders in our group that are doing quite well just based on the simple fact that they use smaller time frame strategies on the 15-minute Bollinger Bands, RSI, some different strategies that work very effective in specific markets. They work more effectively in range-bound activity, which we're seeing right now. Okay, so again, Bitcoin for the moment is range-bound between 20,700 and 21,700. So that little $1,000 range for the moment is kind of what we're expecting to see continue until it breaks the other direction. Again, I know that sounds redundant, but that's just kind of where we're at. Another thing to recognize too, and this to me doesn't matter much, and what I mean by that is that when you see a price above the cloud, not only do you want to make sure that the other factors are present, you also want to make sure that you're not stuck in a range. And I know it seems kind of ridiculous because, how do you break the range? Well, you have to break the range to the upside or the downside. But if you think about it this way here and you kind of look at the all the factors, right? The conversion line hasn't intersected with the price action, it hasn't crossed over the baseline yet, right? So that basically tells us we don't have a form of a MACD convergence, right? There's no convergence on the price. In other words, not enough momentum to warrant a long position. We also have the price action kind of stuck in, the lagging span stuck in the price action that's notoriously assigned to close your long position. I mean, that should have been highlighted a while ago, but generally speaking, that's telling us you shouldn't have a long position open. And the very last thing, of course, is just being above both these leads. But when these leads are so tight, the way that they are right now, they kind of carry less validity. So again, the Ichimoku Cloud is a fantastic indicator, but when the price is stuck in a range, it can give you a lot of false positives, and it really isn't all that super reliable. Best thing to do is look at larger time frames, and you could technically take a look at this on the 4 hour and kind of see where we're at. We're still below the cloud, and you carry that over to the daily as well, also still below the cloud. Because again, it's not a problem to use this on larger time frames, it just depends on what your trading style is. Ichimoku Cloud is consistent on all time frames, but if you're trading for a long term, then you're probably going to want to use the daily, right? So generally speaking, until we're back up above the cloud consistently, I'm not going to be super convinced we've broken this downtrend, right? It's no surprise the price action has been pretty much below this almost the entire time, all right? So that's just, again, some foresight there, something to kind of think about, and that's pretty much what the data is telling us right now. So slight possibility it'll break to the upside, but if it does, it should be short-lived. More likelihood of the price action coming down, honestly. It just kind of feels like it wants to retrace, and we're kind of just on that precipice right now, just kind of waiting for it to happen. It kind of sucks, like be on the edge of a battle, as they say in Lord of the Rings, where you just kind of, you're more nervous of not knowing what's going to happen next than actually choosing a direction and knowing where it's going. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it's at, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards downside versus upside at this point, just based on its history and how terrible Bitcoin does in these situations. It never truly wants to recover. And there's a lot of crazy stuff in the world too right now. You got to just pay attention to the news if you'd like to kind of understand that even though there's some positive Bitcoin movements and, like the Ethereum thing coming up here on September 19th, the mainnet, I believe it is 2.0, we still don't have a tremendous amount of positivity in the space. And regardless of how good those things are, the traditional markets, the regular industry is going to dictate that. And here's something just to touch on too. Traditional markets are kind of breaking even / up a little bit, maybe 0.5 to 0.25%. So it's not enough to warrant a push to the upside, but it does help. And dollar index is slowing and starting, still getting rejected at this resistance level, but it's not official yet. We got to wait and see. So again, a lot of stuff kind of hangs on the balance. So hopefully this clarified some things and didn't provide more questions for you. So anyways, hope, again, this is beneficial. If so, comment below, let me know. If you want to become a better trader, CryptoCache.tech is a site, link in the description below. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one.